Hey everyone, Hannah here from Bears Den Essentials. It's been a little while since I've filmed or uploaded a video to my YouTube channel and I've missed you all. And today I thought it'd be fun if I showed you how to make one of my favorite hats to make that's actually pretty easy to make on your knitting machine. So it's a double ribbed knit beanie, and this is my Taitexma mid-gauge machine. So this is the knitting bed and this is the ribber, and I use both for this particular hat. So what you end up with is a hat that looks kind of like this. These are super popular right now. They have some of the versions are made with a finer yarn. I like these, and I like to add a pom-pom to the top of them. And so this is a really nice warm hat. You can also wear it a couple different ways if you want to. You can make it just a single roll up, and you can have this kind of chunky knit look no matter how you wear it. And that looks kind of funny. Now you see my hair all crazy too. So I personally like double rolling it because living here in Montana, having that extra layer, especially since this is wool, really keeps me much warmer because it can get down to like -20 in January and February. So this hat is deceptively simple because there's no actual crown shaping. A lot of our hats, I do a crown shaping, but because this is all ribbing, I actually just skip that and I cinch the top. So folks can do their own version of that, but for me, I like the simplicity of it. So everyone's machine might be slightly different. For the Taitexma mid-gauge, it is, I'm trying to remember if it's 6 millimeters or 6.5. I'll look it up and I'll add it to the comment section. But this particular mid-gauge, I've pretty well figured out my tensions. So for brown sheep nature spun yarn, which is what I'm using, I actually keep the tension on both the main bed and the river bed at 6 1/3. So make sure you find the right tension for you. I will also put the gauge for this into the comment section. So you start with a cake. I cake all my yarn and I pull from the center just because I find that it has a nice smooth draw for you. So I'm gonna weave that into the little grasshopper antenna here. So you put it through the bottom first. Move my machine cloths. Brown sheep nature spun yarn is nice. It's 100% US wool. You don't think it's gonna be as soft as it turns out to be, but I actually really like it, especially once it's blocked. It has a really nice softness to it. So my yarn is all woven through the tension spool. So everyone casts on differently. For me, I actually really like to cast on the main bed and then I transfer the stitches. You can do whatever cast on you prefer. Some people like to do the double eyelet, or not the double eyelet, but the E-wrap cast on. Others like to use waste yarn. This one I find has a really nice edge to it, which I'll show you in just a second. So here's what that edge looks like. I think this edge looks kind of cool, personally. And I'll make sure to show you how I seam it up as well, just because there's a little bit of a trick to it. So this is gonna be an average adult size hat, and I don't know how y'all feel. This might be like writing on books for you, but I actually marked up my machine, so it's kind of hard to see, but you can see a little bit, like there's my R and the other R, and here's an L. So this is actually for my regular adult and then my adult large hat. So I know, and some of it is because I'm missing I'm missing the panel with the numbers. Unfortunately, it wore out and I haven't yet been able to find a replacement for the exact size of my knitting machine. I've had folks give me some recommendations, but so far no luck in actually those folks carrying it. So I'll keep looking. If you do know, please leave a note in the comments of who might carry this for the Taitexma mid-gauge. It's tricky finding parts even for the newer machines. So let me back up a little bit. So here's what I did for the first. So I leave a tail about probably, what is that? 2.5 feet maybe? And I leave that tail because I actually use that to seam the hat up at the end. So I always give a little bit of a tail when I cast on because I sew it up from the bottom to the top. Because this is a mid-gauge, I do have a linker, but because this is more of a mid-gauge yarn, I just seam it up by hand. So it's kind of like you do the start of a figure 8. Here you go. You take the base, so you go through that, pull it up. For the E-wrap cast on, it's just basically you're creating a cursive E, so I'll go like that so it looks right. So you're going counterclockwise for each loop. So you take the yarn and you do a counterclockwise loop, not too tight and not too loose, and you make sure, let's see if I can zoom in. No, I can't. And you make sure that the yarn sits to the back of each needle. Otherwise, if it's up here, you're gonna have a really uneven tension on the edge. So you do this all the way across. And by the way, sorry about this, I should have said you have 90 stitches. So for me, when I cast on, especially if I'm hand knitting for a hat, I figured out that for worsted weight yarn, about 88 stitches is a really good standard for worsted weight yarn and fits a head between 20 and 23 inches. So I like my hats a little bit tighter so that they can be really snug. If you want a looser hat, then I recommend doing an adult large, which is about 96 stitches. So 96 stitches gives you a hat that fits a head like 23.5 inches or more, but it also gives you a nicer, looser fit if that's what you want for your own hat. And on the machine, because you're gonna be seaming up your hat, always remember to add 2 stitches, so 1 on each end, so that when you seam it together, because those stitches get seamed together, you actually then only have and they become invisible, so they get seamed, and as you'll see, they disappear, and you have a little bit of an edge. So you can see you can see a little bit, but it doesn't sit so high that you can really feel it. So those 2 stitches become a part of basically your inseam, but the inseam is on the hat, so that's probably not the technical term for it. And so for this hat, because I'm making an adult, I'm casting on 90 stitches, so it comes out to 88 as the final product and fits the same way as if I knitted it by hand. By the way, if I sound a little raspy today, it's because it's super smoky here in Montana. If you look at a map right now of the air quality on your phone, you can see that there's fires in northern Nevada, northeastern California, eastern Oregon, and Idaho that are all just like putting the smoke directly over the western half of Montana. Don't even look at Canada's, because the whole country is basically on fire. So we get a lot of wildfire smoke, and unfortunately it comes earlier and earlier each year, and right now we're just basically sitting under a cloud. So our air purifiers get quite the workout this time of year. So that's why I sound a little bit raspy. Without further ado, I'll finish the E-wrap cast on. Alrighty, so that is done. Make sure I have a good center pull going. So the first row is just really to get the cast on finish. So I'm gonna pull the carriage across, Looks good. So something that I devised is I took a bunch of keychain loops and a little carabiner so I can hang the weights down without it. If you try to put them on to the claw, it kind of interferes with you moving the ribber up. So I added this little system for helping me hang the weights without it getting in the way. So you hang the claw weight. Because it's a decent amount of stitches, I actually use 4 large claw weights, but everyone has to fiddle with the weight that they feel the most comfortable running the carriage on. For me, that's 4 large weights. There we go. Sometimes I have to adjust the claw weight. So now here's when I pull the ribber bed up. If you don't have a ribber, this hat is a little trickier to make because you have to manually adjust the stitches from the top. But to give you some directions on how to do that, if you are without a ribber, then you're just gonna knit 84 rows plain, and you're gonna drop every 2 stitches. So you're gonna have 2 and then drop 2 stitches all the way to the bottom and create the purl. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna do that in this video, but if you do have just like an LK 150, for example, you can manually manipulate the stitches so that you create the ribbed effect. It's just a lot more work because you're doing that across the whole bed, so you get a 2x2 ribbing. If you do have a ribber, what I want you to do, I actually don't have, oh yeah, here we go. What I want you to do is take your 2x2 needle selector, and I actually marked up, you can't see it from here and I don't have the ability to zone in and out, but I marked up the 2x2 where you start. Ooh. Still some little fuzz from last time. I thought I cleaned it well, but I guess not. So you select all the 2 needles so you know what you're going to be transferring to. I have my ribber on P3 so that the needles are straight and aligned with one another. So P3 is what I have it situated at. And again, everything is in the normal knitting position. The yarn is selected. Both are at 6 1/3. So again, you got to find the tension that works for your yarn. On some of my thicker yarns or like acrylics, I'll use all the way up to like 7 1/3 or 7 2/3. It really just depends on your yarn, but you might have to adjust the stitch count if it's significantly different from like this very middle of the road tension that I have it at. So now I'm going to take my double eyelet transfer tool and I'm going to transfer every 2 stitches from the top to the bottom. One important thing, both the ends should be knit. So all of the ribbing stitches should be between the 2 ends. That's really important for when you seam it up. You want them to both be knit stitches so that you create an invisible seam this way. If you had, so that's an important thing for when doing the math. You need to have it be a multiple of 4, because if you just increase 2 stitches, you're going to have 2 stitches that are purl stitches on one end and 2 stitches that are knit. And so then when you seam it up, you're going to have a knot, it's not going to be consistent, and you're going to have to compensate by creating a thicker seam when you seam it up. So make sure that it's a multiple of 4. So like 86, 90, 94, 98, for example. And that way you can make sure that if you're doing a double ribbed or 2x2 brim or ribbing, you can have that invisible seam. For single rib, so 1 by 1, it's multiples of 2, so it's a little bit different. But this is a double rib or a 2x2 rib, which is my favorite thing to do. I also do it on my hats that don't have ribbing all the way up, so it creates a really neat look. As you can see, that's the end. And you can see a little bit because of the bump that I haven't gotten rid of yet, but it's a neat ribbing in that it matches the rest of it. And similarly, when you seam up the top, it creates a nice seamless appearance. So I'm going to finish transferring the stitches from the knitting bed all the way to the river. Some people like to use, where is it? To use this, and they think it's faster. I just, for whatever reason, really like my double eyelet transfer tool, but if you like the other tool for transferring, have at it, doesn't really matter. This one, for me, just happens to be, I find it so quick for how I work, but if others like the other tool, or have tips on how you got really quick and efficient with that one, please let me know. The double eyelet just, ooh. If you ever drop a stitch like I just did because you're talking too much, this is my favorite tool, the latch tool, for picking it back up. So basically what happened is I was chit-chatting too much and I wasn't paying attention. But the latch tool is a good way to hook a drop stitch and gently put it back on the needle you need to, so that you don't have to start over. You know what's funny? For this particular hat, I feel like, and this isn't even a feeling, the setup takes longer than the actual knitting. So now all I have to do is knit to row counter number 86, and then I literally transfer the stitches back, cast off, seam it up, and voila, the hat is done. If you are also like me and love pom-poms, then you're gonna torture yourself a little by having to make the perfect pom-pom. I don't know if you get like this, but I have to have like a perfectly cylindrical sphere. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna just knit to row counter number 86 for this particular hat. Without further ado. Again, like I told you, the actual knitting part takes so little by comparison. So then what I do, and everyone can follow their own preferences here, I actually transfer all the stitches back to the main bed, because for me it's easier to take the stitches off when they're all in the main bed, as opposed to trying to take it off when they're partially on the main bed, partially on the river bed. So what I'm just going to do is transfer the stitches back to the main bed. Okay, so now I'm just going to drop the river bed, and by drop I mean gently lower. So I'm going to cut the yarn, and again I'm going to leave not too much, but a decent amount to be able to get all of the stitches on it. Fold. Here's my darning needle. In another one of my videos, I show you the 4-corner crown decrease. I really like it for when I'm doing stocking knit, but for ribbing, honestly, it's like, because I sell these finished knits, it's just not efficient to try to do a ribbing decrease. And some of the ones that are out there where you transfer a stitch over and it goes from 2 to 1, I think those look good. They're just not my personal preference. I really just would rather have the cinched top. So this is totally my preference for how I knit the hats. But if you have a favorite ribbing or a crown that you do on ribbing, let me know in the comments, because I'm totally open to trying new things. So this is just my current approach of having only had my knitting machines for a few years now. So still a work in progress. I actually take the weights and the comb off. It helps make it easier for me to get the hat off the bed. So I'm going to take these off. and carefully I pull the hat forward, careful not to catch it on any of the ribber needles. I don't unfortunately have a ribber cover like my brother KH260 does, but again, I would love to find one if you know a good place where I can get them. Awesome. So now that the hat is off the machine, you can see the base that I've created. So it's literally just a seemingly simple rectangle of fabric, but look how nice that ribbing looks. Like, that's going to be such a nice rolled up double brimmed hat. Oh, and it's so soft too. So let me just first show you how long it should measure out to. Let me be careful not to catch it on the machine. So you'll know you've hit the jackpot when it lands right at about, as you can see, it lands right at about 14 inches without any stretching. So that is really nice because you're going to be double rolling the brim. When you do a hat that is just a single roll, you're going to make it so that it's probably like closer to like 11.5, 12 inches, so that you have like a 9.5 inch hat. For this one, because you're double rolling it, you need a little bit extra, not only to accommodate the thicker roll, but also the fact that there's 2 folds to it instead of 1. So right at about 14 inches is the length that I like to get this, so that it sits in a way that it can sit above your ears, or you can roll it down and it can sit below your ears. In the next video, after this, I'm going to show you how I seam this hat up to create this. And you'll also see me add a pom-pom to it so that you get a look at one of my favorite hats to make, which is basically the hat that Mike Nesmith wore from the Monkees all the time. His was in forest green. These I do in a bunch of different colors, but I really like to make it in forest green as well. So you'll also get to see that. Thanks for tuning in on this video. If there's other types of things you want to see me make on the machine, I know I do largely hats right now, but if there's specific things you want me to focus on more, like my cast on or the crown, once again, I can do another video on just the crown instead of also doing the hat. Happy to do that. And yeah, any other requests as well, happy to incorporate those into future videos. Really appreciate you tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.